Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today for Gang Related, Tupac's last movie. It's the story of two police detectives, Da Vinci and Rodriguez. Da Vinci is played by James Belushi, the brother of John Belushi, and Rodriguez is played by Tupac. They're basically two dirty cops who engage in a crime. Here it is. Kool Moe Dee, who's a drug dealer, is actually an undercover informant through the DEA. They shoot him to steal back the drugs that they had just sold to him. Meanwhile, we meet Joe, a drunk who lives in the alley. Aside from the crime that was just committed, Tupac owes $27,000 to a loan shark. Da Vinci and Rodriguez get together to figure out what they're going to do about this crime that they just committed, so they decide to go arrest a bunch of felons who they already know, but they can't link the murder to any of the felons. Everyone has alibis, such as being in the hospital and committing other robberies and such. It's established that Da Vinci is stressed out by this. He goes to visit his girlfriend, who we know from earlier in the movie actually already knows Joe. Da Vinci's leaving and he discovers Joe. So he decides that this guy fits the description. Joe is still extremely incoherent and really doesn't even know what's going on, so he's brainwashed into thinking that he actually committed the crime until he finally signs a confession. They torture the man by showing him pictures and then enticing him with a bottle of what looks like vodka, till finally he just can't help himself. It's to the point where he actually believes that he himself did shoot this man. So Da Vinci goes to visit his girlfriend. It's determined that he needs her to point someone out in the lineup, which is Joe, who we know that she already knows because he lives in the alley next door, but she doesn't know this. Once Cynthia discovers that it is indeed Joe, the drunk man from the alley next door, she's not happy with pointing him out, but jail works out well for Joe. He detoxes. As it turns out, though, the gun that they used to frame Joe is actively being used in another trial. So the gun is missing. The prosecutor is really upset about that because a killer may go free for lack of evidence. Da Vinci and Rodriguez know right away they need another gun, so they buy one and put it in the evidence room. Meanwhile, Joe sobers up. He still doesn't remember his name, though, which ends in his first case being not guilty for reason of insanity. Back at the Dunner trial, the guy realizes who's the defendant, that's not his gun that he used to kill those people. This is the trial where Joe is held incompetent. So by this time, Rodriguez and Da Vinci are very stressed out about what's going on. In comes James Earl Jones. After seeing a newspaper article, they realize that Joe is actually the missing heir to a very high-status family. They find out that Dr. McCall is actually a saint, the guy they chose to frame for this crime. That ends up being extra stressed. He transplanted organs in Africa, and he's a surgeon. Now that Arthur's on the case, Elliot, who was Joe's original lawyer, has basically turned the entire case over to James Earl Jones. Now we see Cynthia under pressure. Basically, Arthur Baylor is a high-status, high-profile lawyer. She ends up committing perjury where she's arrested. At this point, Tupac, he's worried. I mean, he already owes this $27,000 and now he has this over his head. So at this point, we see him do something that really you wouldn't expect from Tupac. He decides that it's basically within his best interest to rat on his partner Da Vinci because there was no point in him really shooting anybody. So Da Vinci was the one that started shooting people. It's really his responsibility to go down for this. This ends up culminating in him being really stressed out. He goes home and he gets a visit by some people he really doesn't want to see. Mr. Cutlass Supreme, played by Debo, they end up shooting Tupac, which is kind of a striking scene, really. Meanwhile, they go and visit Cynthia while Arthur Baylor signs on to become her lawyer and help her represent herself, thus granting her immunity. So with that, now we see that Da Vinci is on the run and he wants to cut loose ends. But she survives. So he needs a ride out of town, stat. Goes to see his buddy who calls him a limo, but it's the wrong driver. Gunner, whose gun was used in the previous case to prosecute Jill, which got him released on lack of evidence. Thank you for tuning in for Gang Related. Please subscribe and I'll see you again soon.